Welcome to the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole, a 1-hour conversation on mental wellness to improve your look and outlook. During the show, we will talk about a variety of topics which impact you from the inside out. Each show is designed with 3 parts: lights, camera, and action. In our lights segment, we will shed light on a topic around a mental health concern. In our camera segment, we will focus on that mental health concern, educate, and raise awareness. And in our action segment, we will give 3 steps to improve your look and your outlook. So join us for the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole. My name is Dr. Nicole Johnson. I'm a licensed counselor, an assistant professor, a certified addictions counselor, and a trauma professional. Tonight, we will continue our 'Tis the Season series, and we've been talking about COVID and crisis and Christmas, oh my. And so we want to say to our live audience and our replay audience, why don't you like this episode and share it? Share it with someone. Let someone know that the Headshot Podcast is on live or that you're watching it in the replay. Host a watch party for us, and let's get the word out that Headshots is on. So tonight we're going to continue our conversation around COVID and crisis and Christmas, oh my. And last week we had such a powerful session talking about grief and the holidays. And so in that conversation that we had last week, it became very evident that mental health around the holidays is not an individual issue. It is a family issue. So tonight's topic is talking about family mental health. We want to bring this topic to the forefront because many Americans during this holiday season are dealing with increased mental health concerns. Since we have had the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been more calls to the crisis hotline, to the suicide prevention hotline. We know that more persons are using substances, drinking, or using drugs. We know that domestic violence has increased. And we also believe that physical and even emotional abuse of children has increased in this time of high stress, people dying, a lot of grief, a lot of financial problems, and that brings a lot of stress on the family. So tonight we want to bring this to the forefront. And we want to help you, our listening audience. We want to help you maneuver this holiday season, like we have said in many episodes, a holiday season unlike we have ever seen before. So let's shed light on what's going on right now in America and also around the world. In America, according to Mental Health America, they did a survey of mental health. 19% of adults have a mental health concern or mental health illness. That's over 47 million American adults are dealing with mental health issues at this time. And 4.55% of those that are experiencing a mental health challenge are experiencing a serious mental health issue. So that means that there are some people that are walking around that may be experiencing a mental health diagnosis or mental health symptoms for the very first time. They might have been mentally well or consider themselves mentally well and stable and able to manage before COVID-19 and before the crisis of racism and all of the racial things that we have seen going on in our nation. And now we have the holiday season upon us, which adds additional stress. And so we have adults in the family that may be dealing with mental health concerns for the first time. But it's not only the adults that we are worried about today. 13.84 youth between the ages of 12 and 17 report suffering at least one major depressive episode within the past year. That is an increase of 260,000 youth from the previous year. And so, what that's telling us is that pandemic is having an ever increasing impact on our young people. And that's just ages 12 to 17. So, we can only imagine that when we go to our younger children, between 3, 4, 5 school age children that are no longer in school, that are have not able to play with their friends, not able to build those positive relationships. We can only imagine that in the school setting or in the setting around school age children, that mental health issues are increasing. So, what does this mean for the family? This means that families in America can be dealing with the manifestation of mental health issues for the very first time. And because it may be their first time dealing with mental health issues, a lot of families may not even know what to look for in one another, what to expect out of each other, not even know how to communicate with my family member that I'm experiencing mental health symptoms, that I'm thinking I'm having racing thoughts, I'm thinking about depression, I'm thinking about suicide, I can't sleep at night, I can't focus. They don't know how to have this conversation. The person who may have already had a mental health diagnosis may be experiencing worsening symptoms, and their mental health diagnosis can be becoming a worsening condition. And so, what we need to focus in on and what we need to think about is the fact that more people now than ever before are dealing with stress because of COVID 19, because of racial injustices, because of financial problems, and they're also dealing with the stress of the holidays. So if you have children in your family, if you have adolescents in your family, if you're an adult listening tonight, or maybe you're a senior citizen, now is the time to draw your family in. Now is the time to call someone on the phone and let them know Headshots is talking about family mental health. We're talking about the triple threat tonight: COVID and crisis and Christmas, the stress of Christmas season, the stress of the holidays. Oh my, how can that impact our family members' mental health? Holidays are generally stressful. From the preparation to the shopping, today is Black Friday, and it's stressful to think about what am I going to get this one and that one if you engage in gift giving. But even if this year you are engaging in gift giving or holiday meals or parties or get togethers with family and friends, everyone is acknowledging that this is a totally different environment, that we are still trying to operate as we operated last year. We've been talking about it on the show. And so we want to help the family tonight. We want to help you get through this usually stressful time. I've done many trainings and many talks and workshops during this time about how to get through the holiday stress. But we've never had the conversation of how can a family get through the holiday stress in a pandemic. What do parents say to their children? What do children, how can you have that conversation with your children to plan for this holiday? Maybe not being able to see grandparents. How do you talk to your mother or your father? How do children talk to their grandparents? How do we stay connected to the senior citizens in our lives when we are very separate because of the pandemic? So tonight we want to talk about family mental health. I gave you the stats to let you know that we are in a situation, that we are in a much needed area of improvement, and that's mental wellness. The conversation in our families can no longer stay in secrecy, can no longer stay in the back corner of our conversation, only to be mentioned when things are very bad. But the reason why we want to talk about this topic tonight is because we want you to get the help that you need now. We don't, most of the time in my work and in the work that I do, when I connect with families, they are families in crisis. When I connect with individuals, they are individuals in crisis. And so we are having this show tonight because before your family goes into crisis, let's get your family some help. Let's work and talk and understand how to be mentally well during this holiday season. That's what this show is about tonight. So I have with me a very good friend and who I guess I will call him an expert because he is just awesome and he does a lot of work with families. And so I am going to welcome my guest who's going to help me focus in our camera section on how families can improve mental wellness during the holiday season. And that's none other than my guest tonight, John Hale, Mr. John Hale. So let me tell you a little bit about John. John, welcome to the
Hey,
Headshot
Dr. Johnson, how
Podcast.
you doing?
I'm good. It's glad to see you.
It's great to be on
John
your show.
has, good, good. I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to cut you off. John has his master's in human services. He's a licensed professional counselor, a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor, and certified anger management specialist too. That must be really high up. You're not one, he's number two. He's high up. And a trauma competent professional. John spends his time not only working with families that have mental health concerns, individuals, but John is also equipped to support systems into how to better serve those that are experiencing mental health challenges. So, John, once again, welcome to the Headshots podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Good. So, John, we're going to be talking tonight about how families can improve their mental wellness during the holiday season. And so I know we've talked about it. You and I, we always having conversations about mental wellness and families. But I want to ask your opinion from what you've seen and what you're seeing right now. What's the state of the mental health of families, given the statistics that I just read? What's the state of families right now?
Well, once again, first of all, thank you for allowing me on your show. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy the wealth of information that is going out to the public. Based on all the statistics that you had just read to us or told us, was, I mean, you can see the scope of mental health is large,
Mm-hmm.
and is prevalent, is right here before us, and shows like yours, bringing attention and information to it is just, it's just very helpful. And what that tells us is that not only as individuals that we are impacted, but as a family, as a unit, as a group.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gotcha.
you can just reading the statistics that you said, and then in this crisis situation that we are in, or this pandemic, you can just imagine the scope broaden, as you talked about earlier, with COVID, and the things that the the way it's impacting everyone at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
um, is what really broadens the scope and really what opens up the eyes. In most cases, you might see a family suffering or an individual, but for everyone to be connected with the same situation and how that is impacting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And so everybody is being impacted because everybody is under the same amount of stress.
yes,
Everybody, not just the individuals, we're seeing, it may be like at times before, maybe one person that is under this amount of stress, or one person has a mental health diagnosis, but everybody is under the same amount of stress these days. So what we're saying is families are
yes.
experiencing mental health challenges for the very first time. So, John, what are families feeling? Those families that this is their first experience with dealing with a mental health challenge. Talk a little bit about what they could possibly be feeling. I know you may not know everything, but
Mhm.
from your experience, what are some of the feelings that come up for families?
Wow, that's a very important question, because you're right. It could be different for many different families, but for the most part, from my experience,
Hmm.
is the sense of powerlessness that comes over the
Right.
actual
Yeah.
family or caregivers,
Hmm.
experiencing mental health for the first time. it is very crippling to be able to not be able to um, fix or bring resolution to something you never
Mhm.
experienced before. And then you have the
Mhm.
stigma of mental health that comes with that. You know, the stigma of, language that we put on individuals that might be impacted by mental health,
Mhm.
how that impacts me. Unfortunately, the perspective that you can have on mental health could also have on yourself and how you're going to deal with it. If there is
Mhm.
I don't want to say negative perspective, but if it is a
Mhm.
perspective that is unhealthy, then that is also going to weigh on how do we deal with this for the first time. Sometimes, from my experiences, people deal with it and they confide, and there's a lot of secrecy around it, and we don't want
Mhm.
to disclose this information, or no one else should be able to have it, this information or experience, but directly in our inner circle, which is our family. And when you're dealing with it for the first time, the scary part is because you don't know, you're not able, or you cut your resources off of people being able to bring information in to help you. So when you're experiencing for the first time
Wow.
as a family,
Wow.
it can be extremely overwhelming,
Mhm.
especially that sense of powerlessness.
John, I like that. So it has a lot to do with, you know, just being overwhelmed and being afraid. You talked about scary, and also just feeling powerless because I don't know how to fix, like, this
Yeah,
idea of, I don't know how to fix this person or my family or even me as
yeah.
the leader of the family. So John, for family members, how do we break the stigma? How do we, you know, make this an open conversation in our families about mental health, especially if they're experiencing a mental health challenge for the very first time?
Well, I think that's very important. Is because since you're talking about mental health, that's almost the same as if we were talking about somebody's physical health, or if
Hmm.
someone sprained their ankle, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's a rippling effect to that, so therefore it's going to impact us all. If I
Hmm.
physically sprained my ankle and it impaired my movement, then
Hmm.
all those around me are going to be called upon for assistance, you know,
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
able to help. So, but what's also more important though is that we don't do as a family, maybe there's
Hmm.
maybe not a lot of discussion about internal things. Mostly it's
Right.
external.
Oh,
So,
right.
meaning external things that we can actually see.
Okay.
Most of us may not go around and say, as a result of your sprained ankle, it's causing me to feel and think a
Hmm.
certain kind of way. And our
Hmm.
feelings and our thoughts has the majority to do with our mental health.
John,
Um,
you bring up very good points because at one of the other episodes, we talked a lot about mind in your mind. Like, the thoughts that we have a lot to do with why our families are not really talking about mental health. You know, like you said, if someone was to break their arm, we do put a cast on it, but there are also feelings and thoughts that go along with that cast that may be ignored because we feel like the cast is healing everything. And I think that sometimes around the holidays, we may get an impression that, or thought that, maybe the holidays is quote unquote healing everything. Like the Christmas tree, or
mhm.
the lights outside, or the dreidel. Maybe I celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, the candles. That's going to heal everything. But
Okay.
there's some things, John, that need to be healed because we address it. We need to address it. So, what are some things that families should look for in children and youth, adults, and even our senior citizens? What are some things that family members should look out for as we're going into this time of, the holidays are here and we're still under COVID-19, numbers are going up. It's a lot of things going on. So, how do families tune into one another?
Oh, wow. That's another important question. Well,
Hmm.
I think what I would basically say is, one of my pet peeves is that behaviors are language.
Oh, I
But
love that,
what is it
John.
saying?
Yes, that
You
is your
know,
thing. Yes.
there is something behind the behavior that you see.
Hmm.
So, when you're looking for certain behaviors, which in the mental health field describes them as symptoms, so just like anything else, there's a symptoms, and based on the symptoms, there comes a diagnosis. So mental
Yes.
health is diagnosable, and it does have symptoms, but because you have symptoms doesn't necessarily mean that you're diagnosed. So as
Okay.
a family, what you can start looking for is, like I said, behaviors or language. Is when you
Mm-hmm.
start seeing the person's whatever they're feeling or thinking will start coming out in their behavior. So you
Right.
might see a rise of perhaps disruptive or anxious behavior from children.
Okay.
One thing that is common across the board usually is some sort of withdrawal from the
Okay.
family unit. Um,
Hmm.
so you might see the children withdrawing. In smaller children, though, you might see them a little bit more clingy.
Clingy. Yes.
Yeah, a little
Yes.
bit more
Yes.
clingy and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to be next to you and things of that nature. But you got things that happens with young people, like maybe their grades might be dropping, also in adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the interests that the child or adolescent may have had, they begin to pull away from the activities that they really, really like, you know.
Okay.
And in seniors, is also difficult because not only do you have that withdrawal piece, but you also have that piece where a lot of seniors sort of almost, I would say, suffer in silence,
Yes.
especially if they
Yes.
were the strong patriarch caregiver. A
Okay.
lot of times you might hear through my experiences that I don't want to bother nobody because they're so
Right.
busy taking care of everybody. They don't want to be a bother or burden on anyone else. But some of the signs you might see is perhaps increase in accidents or falls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that could also occur with seniors. Obviously, with the younger generation, you would definitely see that isolation or that gravity to things that they normally wasn't participating in that may have negative outcomes um, to
Mm-hmm.
to consequences.
John, I really appreciate all that you said. And so, for our younger children, wait, you said across the board, we should just be looking for people, just changes in behavior. Because, like you said, and I love this saying and I use it all the time, I do give you credit, that behavior is a language. What is
Right.
it saying? What is the behavior saying to us? It's saying that something has changed, something is different, something is not like it was the day before. And so I need to tune into that language and try to explore with my family member what it could be. I liked how you talked about children, children withdrawing, children pulling back, or being very clingy. But the thing that we're talking about is a change. If your child was not clingy, but now they are, there's something to explore. If your child was always around you, but now they're not, something to explore. And I like how you talked about the senior citizens because they are a forgotten group a lot of times, especially with the social distancing. We may not get our eyes on our seniors as much as we used to, but
Hmm.
we need to listen to them and as much as we can tune into what our senior citizens are saying because their behavior too. And like you said, we have to encourage them to talk to us because we want them to know they're not a burden and it
Yes.
is okay, right?
Yes.
They're
Yes.
not a burden, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate that information, and I'm sure that it's going to be helpful for people to start tuning in. What how do families deal with the fact that I'm missing my family, but I also want to stay safe? You
Mm.
know, how is that impacting family mental health? Because part of mental health is being able to connect. We're human beings.
Yeah.
We connection is what really increases our mental wellness and our stability and just gives us joy. It's those relationships, those times we are able to come together. So what would you say to families that are missing family members but also trying to stay safe? What would you say to them?
Well, you like you said, connection is vital. And I would say any way that you can make that connection, whether it's through a phone
Hmm.
call, whether it's through
Hmm.
writing a letter, we are fortunately blessed with the technology that we have to be able to
Absolutely.
actually see one another, FaceTime
Yes.
one another. It's so very important to be able to utilize these different venues in which we can connect or stay connected, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, and doing it in a safe manner because being that there's a pandemic, we are generally concerned about our family members as well as we should be.
Yes.
But at the same token, is we have to take precautions that are different, and those means that there are sacrifices that has to be made. So while I
Mm.
want to see you, the sacrifice is I may need to hear you, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
here doesn't necessarily always mean by the phone, but it also can mean by VA letter, some
Hmm.
other kind of way to get that messaging out that we are connected.
Mm.
And I would say, especially when it comes to staying safe, and even when it comes to Christmas and maybe finding joy in dropping off um, presents and perhaps picking them up in an exchange.
Mm.
Um,
That's
and,
good.
and, and, and I would say too that because this time is so difficult and staying safe is to find a way to to appreciate the challenges and the conflict that occurs within this type of situation.
Hmm.
So in other words, how do I find joy in that exchange? The
Right.
fact of the matter
Right.
that we can exchange is something that I can appreciate. The fact that I have options to do something different is something
Hmm.
that I can appreciate.
Well, John, I like what all the things you said. Talk about, really going back to being creative in our connection, a creative connection with our family members, and that may mean going back to some old
Yeah.
things that we used to do, and that is writing letters. Or I found myself in this season of Thanksgiving sending out cards and just
Yeah.
really going back to some of the ways that I can connect with people because it does take a lot to make those phone calls, or where before you could go one place and see 20 people, now you have to make 20 phone calls, and people may not have enough hours in a day. So I like what you talked about, just like being grateful in those areas where we can be grateful about the opportunities we do have. But John, I'm 10 years old and I want to see my grandmom.
Mhm.
I don't care about trying to find a creative way. I want to see my family. I want to see my cousins. I want to see my pop. I want to see Meemaw or whoever. What do you say to parents that are trying to explain to their children about this holiday season, about seeing their loved ones?
Well, that's very critical as well and crucial because one thing that I think that we could benefit from teaching our children is how do we connect through a crisis. So in other words, we don't want to ignore the fact that it's there, but then how do we teach them how to process things that in certain situations you just cannot do,
Hmm.
And I think that is very important is that we don't sugarcoat it, but we sit with them and learn how to walk it through it. Meaning, what are you saying? Meaning, hear the children out, be there with them,
Hmm.
um, uh, not necessarily help them understand, but help them process and voice those things.
Hmm.
Because
So,
there are going to be times where we just cannot do certain things, and that missing people is actually a part of life.
mhm. Seems like we
And
lost
that
John. Okay.
absence makes a heart go fonder, heart grow fonder is very very true. So then how do we then, like you said, the creativity has to be there, but at the same
Hmm.
token, so is the reality. So like I said, I go back to when you are allowing people to have some sort of memory in
Uh
terms
huh.
of, like you said, we're going back in time, there will be a lot of pictures. Back in time, there will be photo albums, things of that nature to be able to sacrifice the physical connection for the visual
Hmm.
connection. But one thing that you would never lose, whether it's physical or visual, is the emotional piece.
Oh,
And that
yes, John.
emotional piece really lies in your memory and in your spirit. So how do we then start teaching kids how to experience that or pull out that experience as something that is still there and still
Hmm.
tangible. Because
Hmm.
we do live in an intangible, external type of society now. Like you got to see
Hmm.
stuff, you got to touch stuff, you got to have stuff,
Hmm.
which is fine. But the ultimate piece of love is connection.
Yes, John.
And I
Yes.
think if
Hmm.
we start talking to our children that this is the key. This is one thing that I was thinking about, and that is that love is a gift, correct? Of course, the
Yes.
gift of love.
It's a gift.
And because
Mm-hmm.
you love, you like to give gifts.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the love could be overshadowed by the gift.
I got you, John. Yes.
When really
Yes.
the gift of love is the connected piece.
Yes.
The actual tangible gift is almost like the icing on the cake.
I got you.
So, like you said, sometimes we might be forced to go back into actually going back to the bread and butter of connection, and
Oh,
how
and the
that connection of
mm-hmm.
love is
Mm-hmm.
the actual gift, not the
Mm-hmm.
physical gift. Now, children may not necessarily understand that. And then also parents too that may not, who may be in a predicament where they can't give a physical gift. The
Mm-hmm.
ultimate gift or the appreciation of that gift starts with the foundation of that connection. So I
So
think
so
this might be a time where we're in a position to reconnect, and how
mhm.
the connection, which is the experience, which is the relationship, is the actual gift of love.
John, I mean, you tell me like, oh my goodness, because so many things that you
And
were
I'm sorry
saying
for
was
being so
so
long.
wonderful. And I really think that when we talk about mental health and mental wellness, we really talk about the fact that those social supports are so important. Social supports are the ways that people gain the strength. They're able to get through the most challenging mental health symptoms. We've seen it. We're always talking to clients about who's your supports, who's your social supports, because we know that when you have social supports, you're more likely to recover. Your recovery, your prognosis is better. And so to be able to say that, go back to the basics of relationship, because those relationships will improve and help your mental wellness. Go back to love being the foundation. Go back to
Mhm.
talking to one another and connecting with one another, so that if there is the manifestation of a mental health symptom, I won't have to suffer alone. I won't have to deal with it alone. I
Mhm.
will have family members that not only I trust, but I know love me.
Yeah.
But John, even as you're talking about this conversation in the home, what about homes that are in crisis? What about homes where there is no out? We know parents are frustrated, children are frustrated, crises are happening in this season.
Yeah.
What do we do with those homes? How do those homes get to a place of mental wellness?
Wow. I think that, to be really honest, is that hopefully that families like that are being introduced to podcasts like yours, Dr. Johnson.
Hmm.
Because most of the time the information has to be inserted if it's not
Yes.
there.
Right.
You can't do something about what you don't know, you
Right.
know. But once
Right.
you know, you can't go back to not know.
Right.
So it really depends on the avenues. So that's why it's so important for the inner circle family to have a relationship with other circles, to
Mm.
be able to get that
Hmm.
information, and then other
Hmm.
circles being able to share that. As like I just said before, if I can't give you the physical present of I don't know, I send you cookies, flowers, or
Hmm.
something. Merry
Hmm.
Christmas. Um, but how about in the state that we're in right now? Is that the president is just listening to you, or the president is giving you some information about what you're
Right.
going through, so that you
Like the
can
chicken.
get the resources that you need.
Right. Right.
Not necessarily being the resource, but connecting you to the source
Hmm.
for the resources, rather than always providing. I know that may sound a little uh,
No,
off,
I got
but
what you're saying, John. I think you're saying, what I hear you saying is the fact that, we're so used to giving a gift. And what you're saying is the gift in this time may be the
mhm,
gift of information.
yeah,
I asked you earlier, how do we break the stigma? We break the stigma through the gift of information. And know what is a greater love than giving you information that is going to change your life, that's going to transform your family. And we talk about this season. This season is a season of giving. And we
yeah,
talk about, it's this Christmas, and it's a season of celebrating the birth of Christ who gave. And
hmm
what better way to give to a family member or friend in this season that may be dealing with a mental health issue for the very first time.
Mhm.
See, I really want to focus. I know we have people who have family members that have mental health issues, okay? And we want to stay diligent with those family members. But I'm really focusing in on tonight those people who you have never seen depression and now you're seeing it.
Yeah.
You've never seen bipolar disorder and now you're seeing it. You've never seen someone 1 minute happy, the next minute sad, uh, argumentative. You've never seen your child not want to play the game, not want. You've never seen this in your child, in your family member. You've never seen this in your best friend, and now, or in your grandfather, grandmother who parent. You've never seen this in yourself.
Hmm.
And now here you are sitting in a pandemic thinking, I should be able to shake this off, and it's not leaving you. That's our audience tonight, John. And
Yes.
this is not just impacting individuals. Let's even talk about those who may have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and have come through it. There have been reports of mental health issues for persons who have come out of COVID-19, long lasting mental health concerns, racing thoughts,
Yeah.
hallucinations. These things have been an after effect of even the COVID-19 diagnosis. And so, with the level of grief and loss and all the things that are going on, I really wanted to talk to those people
Hmm.
who are struggling because this is my first time. I don't know what to do.
Hmm.
And John, you're giving just great advice, about parents and talking to their children during this holiday, talking as a family during this holiday season, because even as parents, there may be a division on how to approach this holiday season. So, John,
Yeah.
here go another one. I'm going to throw them at you, okay? How should parents communicate to their children that gift giving may look different this year, that they may not have what they would be expecting. They may have written a list, or like my niece does, she sends us a PowerPoint presentation of
Oh.
what she wants, PowerPoint presentation every year of what she wants. She's in college now. She said she didn't have as much time to do it, but it's still a PowerPoint presentation, music embedded and all. It's just a presentation. And kids do a lot, adolescents, young adults, people do a lot around gift giving.
Yeah.
How do we have that conversation, and when should it be? When should we tell our children that Christmas is going to look different this year?
Wow, that is such a challenging situation that many families are in.
Yes, sir.
I think basically it really should happen immediately. I really
Hmm.
do. And I
So
think
talk
that,
now.
yeah,
Talk
talk now.
now.
Let's talk
Hmm.
now. And one of the things that I would advise is for the adult is to um, recognize that and help the child understand that their feelings could be separated from their actions. Meaning, like,
Yes.
who does not want a gift? Really,
Right. Right.
everybody loves getting a gift,
Yeah.
And the fact that I cannot have a gift this year, or I won't be
Hmm.
getting a gift this year,
Uh
may
huh.
not change my feeling,
Hmm.
even though I understand the rationale.
Right. Right.
And I don't want people to get the person who may be still processing the feeling of not being able to have a gift as if it's something selfish, rather
Hmm.
than that's just how I feel. I really was expecting to have a gift. I was
Yes.
anticipating and excited about getting something, and now
Yes.
I'm not getting that.
That's right, John. Yeah. Yeah.
And because I'm not getting that is the reason why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling.
Hmm.
But make that separate from my character.
Right. Right. Right.
So that way we're not, giving out information to a child that may be having difficulty processing the situation, and we're
Hmm.
leaning on the rational, moral side and thinking side of things, not
Hmm.
realizing that the child has feelings and they're going to be in those feeling type of things, more or less uh, uh, um, the rationale behind what's actually
Right.
happening. So you can experience two things at one time. You
So
can
that,
understand why something's happening, but it
yes.
doesn't mean you still don't feel what you feel. And
Okay.
I think what happens is once I seen this movie the other day called The Impossible, and it was
Hmm.
basically almost like a tsunami hit. And prior to that happening, the young child did not want to be with his brother.
Hmm.
Now how that could
Hmm.
be, older brother, little brother. But the fact of the matter is, what basically happened is the perspective changed for this young child, meaning that the external and the material things, which are something that we all like to have, became less important
Right. Right.
when the pandemic, when the crisis arose. It
Right.
just helped them put in perspective that, you know what, in all reality, I'd rather have that connectedness. I'd rather have my family. I'd rather have this than the external things. So it's going to be very difficult to share with children, but I would say is allow children to participate in, there we go, the creative things, making things for one another. Make
Hmm.
something for your child,
Hmm.
if you cannot buy something for your child. But a lot of that is really going to be based on the adult and if they feel guilty or overwhelmed because they can't give. And that's one of the things that if you
Yes.
don't leave with anything tonight, I would love for you to leave with how important the gift of connection is over the external, tangible thing that you can receive.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
gift of connection is really honestly a hug. I mean, I know,
Yes.
I know, I can give my wife the best jewelry. I can give her a nice piece of furniture, whatever it is. But I
Hmm.
do know the times that we're
Hmm.
holding hands and watching TV
Hmm.
is either just important or more important than that
Hmm.
actual gift.
So, John, what you're saying is the time that people spend with one another, the sacrifice of time, the sacrifice of I make an effort to connect with you is worth more than any money that or any gift. But with children and with adolescents and even with some adults, give people the opportunity to process,
Yeah,
for their perspective to shift, because it may take time
yeah,
for their perspective to shift. And John, in all honesty, why would I expect someone to automatically understand when a lot of times for parents, every year it's not a great year financially. Every year, parents may struggle, but every year it seems like they pull that rabbit out of the hat. And kids become accustomed to that. They
yeah,
become accustomed to, and guess what? It really honors and promotes parenting. It's saying, I know my mom is going to come through for
yeah,
me. I know my dad's going to come through for me. I
yeah.
know my grandmom, granddad, my big sis, big bro. I know they're going to come through. And it is a disappointment
Right,
when
right.
somebody it doesn't come through the
Yeah,
way that a child is used to.
yes,
But like you said, that disappointment, the damage that comes not only to the family but to a child's mental wellness is when the child expresses that disappointment and it is met with a negative response, a response that is out of anger or out of that guilt you just got finished mentioning.
yeah, yeah,
I feel guilty, I feel inadequate, and that's what I cast back on the child, my inadequacy or my guilt, and
hmm,
it turns into something negative, and that child feels shame, and
yeah.
that child says, "Well, you know what? If I couldn't freely express myself, I won't freely express myself again."
That's
And
true.
John, tell me about the teachable moments that this because as you're talking, I'm thinking like this whole pandemic and in our families and around mental health issues and relationships and communication. This is a whole learning experience.
Yes, it
So,
is.
what are the teachable
Mm.
moments that families can take out of this experience of this COVID and crisis and Christmas? Oh my, what's the teachable moment for us?
Well, I don't, that's wow. Well, first of all, like you said, even on the broadcast, it's impossible to give everything,
Right.
even in the segment that we're trying to. Um, but some of the takeaways. What was the question
Hmm.
again? Say the question
Yeah, I
again.
said, what is the teachable moment for
Oh, the
us?
teachable moments.
Yeah, and all of this.
I, First of all, I always find a moment for teaching in almost everything.
Yes, sir.
Um, but it really, I guess, the teachable moments really have to start with with um with sharing what you're actually thinking and feeling. For
Okay.
a lot of times we believe that our thoughts are personal and we
Yes.
keep them to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. However, our feelings are also played out through our behavior. So I believe that the teachable moments really is simply talking about what you're thinking and what you're feeling and putting
Okay.
perspectives around that. So a teachable moment sometimes might also be a learning moment,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that when you're listening to your child, then you're learning.
Oh, yes,
And that
John.
might be the lesson, hearing from
Mm-hmm.
them
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, hearing from
Mm-hmm.
that youth. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of youth like to be
Mm-hmm.
heard, and
Mm-hmm.
they do believe that they can bring some things to the table, especially
Yes.
adolescents. They're the wisest species on earth. At that
Yes,
age,
yeah.
we know everything at that age, but not so easily cast it out. So I think
Mm-hmm.
teachable moments is really when you get the perspective yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're able to share that with someone else. But all moments are teachable for me.
John, I really appreciate the information that you've given, and basically the fact that you have just told us as a family to go allow emotions to be expressed, allow thoughts to be expressed, because thoughts and feelings are the foundation of mental health. They are the foundation of mental health concerns. And if we set that environment in our homes, in our families, especially in this time, amongst people who may have never had experienced a mental health challenge, we will find families that will move forward into mental wellness as a family, where the person who has the diagnosis doesn't feel isolated, which can happen a lot of times,
Hmm.
or they feel like I can't share because I will no longer be accepted.
Yeah.
Even the thoughts and the feelings around the holiday, just
Yep.
as a family, John, I just really, I really appreciate the thing that your wisdom that you've given, and the instructions is like, let people share their feelings. You may learn something about your
Yeah.
children by listening to them. You may learn something when you include the adolescents or the child in the decision making
Yeah.
around what are we going to do this holiday. You may be pleasantly surprised. But if we don't, thinking that our children don't know or they have no idea, what do they know? We may cut off a great family opportunity, a great
Yeah.
opportunity to improve the mental health of our entire family, because the idea that we might not have even thought of, that child might have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to
John,
find different ways to connect, as you mentioned
mhm,
it already. Connection for me is the key, and
that's
we
right.
connect through communication.
Yes,
We connect through communication, and if we really think about it, prior to the pandemic, our lives were so busy
yes,
that
yes.
the gifts actually served almost as our method of communication, or
Hmm.
or, or our um or
Hmm.
our gift for the lack of time being able to spend with the child or loved one, or within the family. Everybody's running and scattering all around, but then this gift means that, hey, remember, I love you, you know
Right.
but we miss out on that connecting piece,
Hmm.
and this is how we communicate. So you'll see a lot of people coming together right now, and the reason why I say that is to take the pressure off of families, is
Hmm.
because this might be something new, or this
Right.
might be
Yes.
something new that you have to do.
Yes.
We may wanted to spend time together, but now that we're spending time together, we haven't learned how to spend time together,
I
and the
got you.
stress and difficulty that can come with that. And the same thing with taking a break, meaning that, because of the fact that I have to take a break doesn't mean that I'm rejecting you. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff that can be really talked about in that. But Christmas is so important that you said that, is
Hmm.
because the same values and the thing about the season that brings people together is something that everybody's looking for, something to hope in,
Hmm.
something to share, on a positive note, and
Hmm.
how if you can't give the gift, how stressful that can be. But when you go back to what we were just talking about, the actual experience and the
Hmm.
connection is the gift. Even in they say about trauma, Bruce Perry says that trauma is healed through the context of relationship.
Yes.
And that's because we are built to have relationship. We're built to communicate and connect with one another.
Right. And I'm looking at a comment from Jessica that said, learning how to spend time together is important. And
Mm,
so, if we're going to maintain, John, the mental wellness of our families, if we're going to address mental health issues that may be manifesting for the first time or that have been um, worsening because of all of the things that are going on in this difficult time that our whole nation and our whole world is in, we're going to need our families. We're going
yeah.
to need the people that are right around us to be watchful, to be supportive, to be people that we can talk to. And so, John, I want to thank you so much, so much. Definitely, you're definitely coming back because we could sit, and I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
Yeah.
We always have a wonderful time talking together,
Yeah.
sharing, training together, and I so appreciate you because the wisdom that we were able to give families tonight around how to get through the COVID and crisis and Christmas. I know people are going to remember this. I know people are going to watch it and they're going to be helped. So, John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for having me, and I appreciate your weekly podcast. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, John. And look,
God
I
bless
look
you.
forward to having you on again.
Oh,
Definitely.
thank you.
And so, as John has shared with us tonight, so many wonderful things about connecting and being connected to family members and friends, and just really tuning into one another and remembering that behavior is a language. What is the behavior of your family member saying? Is it saying that something is going on? And John gave very wonderful clues about children, about adolescents, about adults, and about senior citizens. Some of the behaviors, if people are withdrawing, if they're not excited about activities that they would normally be excited about, if you're finding people more argumentative. John talked about the fact that, even if we're in the house together, how do we handle crises? And he went back to the foundation of relationship. So if you are tonight having someone in your family that you believe is dealing with a mental health issue, and maybe your family is dealing with this for the first time, I want to leave you some action steps. I want to leave you some things that John, he walked right through the action steps tonight. He really did. And the first one is I'm going to give you 3 D's to deal with this situation tonight. What can your family do to be mentally well? One is D is discuss. Discuss mental health now. Don't wait. If you have a feeling that one of your family members is having a mental health crisis or a mental health situation, you want to bring it to the forefront now. Discuss it. Talk to them. Open up the lines of communication. The second action step that I want to give you is decide. John talked about coming together and listening to our children and listening to adolescents. Decide how you will celebrate the holidays. Make it a family thing. Take it and make it important. Listen to everyone and decide how your family will celebrate this holiday season that's going to be different. And the third D I want to share with you tonight, the third action step is deal. Deal with the challenges as a family as they come. Openness will keep the struggle, like John talked about, this people struggling privately. Openness will keep the struggle out of secrecy. So you want to deal with it. If your family is having a financial challenge, deal with it. We talked about last week about grief and about how children learn how to grieve from their family, from their parents. Well, family, your children, other adolescents, other family members learn how to deal with crisis as a whole. So if you're having challenges, deal with it. Don't, it's not going to go away. Don't put it under the carpet. Don't ignore these issues, but deal with it. It's our desire that in this holiday season, that you and your family would walk in mental wellness. I'm not saying that you will walk free from concerns or challenges or things that need to be addressed as a family. I don't know what your family may be going through right now, the stresses, the loss, the grief, the strain, or the pressures that your family is going through. But one thing I do know is that if you would encourage your family to start talking about mental health, start talking about just the holidays and what are you going to do, start talking about the state of your family financially. I can promise you that as you forge in these difficult conversations, it will build social supports amongst each other. It will help raise awareness right in your home. It will reduce stigma the more you are open and talking about mental health issues. Friends, here at the Headshots podcast with Dr. Nicole, we are concerned about your mental health and your family. So if you're here tonight and you heard our live broadcast and you know someone that could benefit, let's say they're having a challenging time, you've been talking to a friend and they're trying to figure out how they're going to buy all these things for their children, how they're going to tell their child that they won't get that gift that they wanted, ask them to watch the podcast. Ask them to watch tonight's show that they may learn how to move forward and to make sure that not only are they mentally well, but that their family is. We appreciate all of you and we appreciate our guests on tonight, um, Elder John Hale. He is just such a wonderful gift to all of us and to the body of Christ and to the field of mental health. He is a blessing. And we are so happy to be able to give you this information that you may be mentally well. So we thank you and we look forward to seeing you next week on the Headshots podcast with Dr. Nicole. Please like us on Facebook, go to our YouTube channel, and subscribe. We look forward to bringing you more information on mental health topics that'll help you and the entire family. God bless you and have a good evening. Thank you for watching.